そういう認識に至ったの？
The fourth album features a broader range of sounds.
ドラムが入ってる。ドラムが入ってる。
A larger range of instruments, drums. Did you feel that playing one guitar would be rather limiting?
No, I think I just didn't want to repeat myself. I mean, I could go on making Life's a Riot for years, but I'd get bored, and I know the audience would get bored. So that in mind, really, it was that and the influence of Joe Boyd, who produced it, on getting a few more instruments on. You know, there was a bit of a struggle over the drums. I'm not a great drum band, but I think we reached an happy compromise between all that.
前のことを繰り返したくなかったんですけど、第1本でね、ダイエットまでやっても本人つまらないようし、逆につまらないから、それは一つ。もう一つジョー・ボイドっていうプロデューサーを起用して、で彼がどうしてもいろんな音をこう取り入れたいっていうところがあって、特にドラムに関してはいろいろと喧嘩したけど、結局妥協案として、
ドラムスの音を入れないっていうのはどうしてそのこだわって？
Why you not want a drum?
It's always the drummer's always the person who's rude to your girlfriend.
Sorry, what?
There's always the drummer's always the person who's rude to your girlfriend and says fuck in front of your mate. It's always the drummer.
分かったわ。
Did you get that?
Yeah.
Really, what it is I think
I thought you said you had better answers this time.
What it is that if I started using the drummer on everything, then I'd have to start using the drummer live, and I think then that would restrict me from a lot of the things that I think are important about playing solo. I mean, you know, getting in the way of the lyrics, not being able to be so mobile, and having to deal with him when when you're talking to a heckler and he climbs over the top and punches out the heckler. All those things.
ライブやるときにね、ドラムスの邪魔になる、歌詞が分からなくなる。でしかもいろいろとステージで動くんだけど、どうしても邪魔くさいんだよ、ドラムスが。だからアルバムでドラムス入れるとライブでもやらなきゃいけなくなるから、それを敬遠してたわけ。
Sort of, that take the whole thing onto a different level if I employ the drummer concept.
取り返しのつかない状態になってしまうから。
And a lot of that. And although a lot of people think it's logical to go from solo performance to band, I don't think that's logical at all. I think it's much more interesting to just play with other, one or two other instruments and not just go and form a band just because everyone thinks you ought to.
理屈としてはね、ソロからバンドへと、転向するのはきつだろうけど、まあいろんなやり方あるから、いろいろやってみたいと思うんだけど、決まったパターンにはまらないで。
じゃあ傾向としてどんどんそのサウンド的に厚みをこれから増していくだろうっていうそういうことじゃないんだ。
It's not a matter of kind of building in pyramid style, and now that you've got more sound, you have to experiment with more stuff, become a bigger and broader musical.
Well, I think really you have to sort of I don't go in the studio with an idea exactly how everything should sound. Really, it develops in the studio. I mean, I've got the songs, and I'm not, I've developed in my mind the length of the songs and the meat of the songs, but the arrangement of the songs comes together with sitting down with the producer and other musicians and working it out that way. So I find it more interesting to work on using the guitars as percussion, like we did on something like New Spell, or Grinch the New Brunette, or She's Got a New Spell off the new album, which is a good example of layering up the guitars so that they take on a percussive role, rather than just bass and drum.
歌っていうのはやっぱ基本的にそのギター一本でもあって、そのエモーションがこもってればそれで十分なんです。
But it's basically enough just to have like one guitar to get across the...
Live it is, yeah. Live, I think so, yeah. Because I think there should be a difference between live and studio now. I think I've got to that stage where I should be having that kind of difference. And I'd be a rather Luddite if I was in the studio and saying, I don't want don't put this on. I don't want to be over precious with the songs. But at the same time, I think it's very good to strip them away live and play them in a different way live.
だけど今のライブ状況なレコーディング状況になるというのはやたらとその人員を増やしてですね、やたらと豪勢な音を出すという方向に進んでいるような気がするんですけど。
Seems like a lot of people when they take their music to the concert arena, they tend to concentrate on very big sounds, very elaborate sounds.
Yeah.
I think there's a trend.
Well, I think that's different. I think that there's a different trend going on with people like Tracy Chapman, where a solo performer, audiences are again starting to realise that a solo performer can concentrate your attention much more than a big band, which a lot of the time, particularly the heavy rock bands, kind of like batter you into listening to them. You have to listen to them because it's impossible to talk. Whereas a solo performer, the best solo performers, silence the audience by their intensity, by making them listen, by making them not speak because they don't want to miss anything. You know, that's what's good about a performer to me. You know, a performer that really draws your attention.
ハードロックをやってる連中はね、やたらとでかい音でこう、そういった音でね、客が黙ってしまう。ところが一人でやるブレイクチャットみたいな人が、別に自分は強烈なものを持ってるから、そういったもので客を黙らせるっていう、集中させる。本来のパワーで、音の大きさじゃなくて。
I mean, that's just one example, Tracy Chapman's of this example, but I saw Al Green this year at the Hammersmith Odeon, and he did some singing off mic in a high-pitched voice, and I mean, it was really hard. All you could hear when he sang off mic was the seats in the Hammersmith Odeon creaking of people leaning forward, trying to hear his voice. It was so great, it was like an angel, and that just really, him singing off mic, incredibly focused everyone's attention for that small period. It was like don't speak, don't dare. It's such a fragile thing. Hearing that, you know, any burst of anything really would have just destroyed the moment. And I think that is what, as performers, we should be doing, not battering people over the edge with the power of our light show and the volume of our music.
やっぱりそれの他にですね、音楽産業としてレコーディングにしてもライブにしても金がかかりすぎるというそういう批判から自分のスタイルを変えていたという面もあるんでしょうか。
There's also a bit of criticism these days as to the amount of money being spent on recording and live shows. Do you think that has influenced what you've done?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think there is a division in those who believe that it should all be a huge spectacle, and the more money you spend, the more great you are, or the more records you sell, the better you are. But I think that the punk ethic I remain more influenced by is that, you know, the important thing is honesty. And that it's that makes a good show rather than a great amount spent. I don't really look forward to transferring myself into the hockey arenas and that. And I'm not aiming for that. You know, I'm good up to about 2,000 people. Beyond that, I lose the important contact. So I think it's the point of contact is more important to me than the honesty listening now.
次の質問です。去年リリースしたシーズリービングホームがイギリス1位になってなんと年間売り上げでも2位だったっていうとんでもない大ヒットになってきたんですけどなんでこんな売れたんでしょうか。
Rather surprising the success of She's Leaving Home. It's been one of the charts and says it was like the number 2 selling song for the entire year. What's going on?
I don't know who was more surprised, if I was more surprised really between the two. I have no idea how or why that record was a hit. If I knew, I'd do it again. I mean, I think a lot of it was to do with having Wet, Wet, Wet on the B-side, and they're really hot among the younger audience. But I really can't, you know, imagine why that particular song for that particular cause at that particular time should sell so many records. And I'm kind of relieved that I didn't feel under any great pressure after having a number one. It wasn't my record, it wasn't my cause really, and so I was kind of like an honorary number one, so I was quite relieved in that I wasn't, when the House Martins had their number one hit single, their band was just totally fucked. They had a number one hit single, and I think the pressure on them was so intense that if the next single wasn't number one, they'd somehow failed. You know, you have to. There is a pressure that you have to continue to better yourself. And if you had a number one hit single, the pressure on a band would be so intense, and I didn't feel that pressure with this thing because one, it was a shared number one. It wasn't my song, and I didn't feel that I was the focus of so much pressure. I got the attention and everything, but I was quite lucky. You know, I managed to not get the breathing down the neck of it was kind of like being invited to be part of that ridiculous number one thing without actually having to be a paid up member and go through the whole dressing up silly and wearing silly makeup and all that crap.
But the record company was nudging you to do another Beatles cover.
Not at all. No one. No. They in fact said not to do a record with Wet, Wet, Wet. My record company. They said don't do it. But I thought it's important to. I want access to Wet, Wet, Wet's audience. So I'm prepared to make a compromise and do a record with them in a hope that they might pay attention then to the things that I'm saying. Because without the audience of Wet, 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 nothing's going to change. Billy Bragg's audience on their own, the few of them, are not going to change the world. It's the people that are buying records in the millions, fans of Wet, 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 fans of Dire Straits, them kind of bands are the people we've got to get our message across to. So I felt that was a very, very good reason for doing something with the Wax.
その影響についてはどんなこと言ってた？
言ってたけど、そうか、次に戻るね。自分の場合は、その限界っていうのがあって、例えば、どんどんでかいライブハウスとね、やるようになったって、自分の場合はせいぜい2000人までが限界だ。それ以上の人が集まってくると、どうもそのコミュニケーションできなくなるのはたまにあるから、だからそのどんどん金かけて、どんどんでかいものにしとこうっていう、そういう考えは全くね。
でもそれ言ってたかもしれない。その結果、お前次もナンバーワンだってとか、そういうプレッシャーが高まるだろう。もしくは認知度が強力に上がってですね、やりやすくなるとか、そういうことないですか？
それは今ある程度話したけど、レコード会社としてはね、別にそんなことやらなくていいと。むしろほらシングルがウェットと一緒になったと、そういうこともやるなとレコード会社に言われたんだけど、いやそのイメージ的に悪いじゃん。アイドルバンドと一緒にされるの。それやるなって言われたんだけど、しかしそのほらチャリティーだったし、でチャリティーで何かをアクションを起こすときに、やはりそれだけのなんていうか大きな層が非常に入ってくる。大きな層っていうか、ウェットのファン層、そういう人たちに伝えなきゃいけない。ビリブラグの制作したファン層に伝えちゃってもうどうにもならないわけ。もうごく少数の人たちだから。だからウェットのファン層を利用しようということで、そのシングルを使ってました。
ウェットって普通こっちにいるとどういうファンと出てるか全然わかんないけどさ、
いや全くアイドル
全くアイドルでアーティストとしてはなんかこんなやつと一緒にされたくねえなってそういう感じの人たちなんだ。
今彼としてはね、音楽的なイメージ的にもね、しかしそのファン層が欲しかった。
いやそのウェットってそういう人たちなんですかね。
You kind of probably didn't know Wet was that kind of a team bopper.
Yeah, in England, yeah, they're right up there with Ross and all those other wacko bands. But they've always been a bit more ideologically angled. They were sort of like interested in the Red Wedge from before.
Was it Red?
They were wet, yeah. So that's quite I didn't feel so far cut off.
Yeah,
You know, they are quite concerned young lads.
ビリー・ブラッグはそういうのと一緒になってる自分のなんか妙な感じだったのかね。
It must have seemed still rather odd to you to be paired with them on the same record there.
Yep, but I think these odd pairings are very important. You get into them and you don't just do what people expect you to do. I think that's the worst thing.
Yeah.
Is to, which in some ways, if I'd have come out with another album with just voice and guitar sound with Thatcher and Ronald Reagan and crap, then I would have been doing just what people expected me. I think it's a lot more interesting and a lot more important to do what people don't expect you to do. If only to be for the sake of mischief.
その期待通りにね、動いたって面白くもなんかね、そういう意表をついた行動はやりたい方だからね。
これは非常に深いところです。シリアスなクエスチョンですね。さっきその自分のメッセージを伝えるためにはね、そういうマーケットも当てにして多少その無理をしてでもやっていった方がいいという非常に前向きな考え方が出ましたけれども、やっぱチャートで1位になるとか金をバシバシ儲けるとかね、とことん有名になるとかモテるとかさ、そういういわゆるその世俗的な意味での成功っていうのはビリー・ブラッグにとって何なんでしょう？
Talk about causes and reaching people. How about the more what would you say, sort of the more glitzy side of the business, attaining fame and fortune and sort of idolatry. That's something doesn't appeal to you at all?
Not really, no, quite frankly. I think fame is something that exists in your head. One, doesn't help you that, you still have to queue up in the supermarket, no matter how famous you are. You still have to shit and it still stings. And also, as far as idolatry is concerned, I think if we're going to change anything, if we're going to try and change anything, then your only hope is to reflect the responsibility for change back onto the audience. Because you as an individual, I'm not going to change the world by singing songs about it. That's pretty no-handy. So you want to be a catalyst. Probably the most you can be is to reflect back that responsibility on the audience and say to the members of the audience, if you want to change it, it's up to you to take action, not to sit in the audience and clap me just because I'm just saying what you want me to say. So I try and distance myself from both those things, from the ridiculous situations that fame gets you into, and also the temptation to kind of be a leader or be a spokesman. You can't, I certainly wouldn't trust anyone like myself to be the spokesman for my generation. I'd much rather have someone who's a bit more, had a few more ideas than just me.
Are you serious though?
In what way?
No, serious about not wanting to be like a spokesman?
No, I'm not a spokesman. I'm not only am I serious about not wanting. I'm telling you, man, I am a spokesman merely for Billy Bragg, for no generation, for no group of people. Because if you put yourself down as a spokesman, then people can just come along and buy the T-shirt and buy your record and say, well, I've done my bit. Braggy can worry about the rest, and Braggy can do the rest. I don't want to be involved in it. I want to be involved in genuinely trying to inspire people to take action themselves. We should all be at our own activity, not just someone on stage who is our the person by which we express ourselves. I don't want to be comforting. I want to be provocative.
But I mean, don't you think it boils down to your being like what they would call an opinion leader? Or
I want to be someone who has an opinion and uses that as a stick to beat other people. I don't want to be someone who gives the opinion that's gospel and everyone has to accept it.
But it seems to me that's kind of what it boils down to. Then it's like maybe somebody who's 19, impressionable, and hears you saying something and agrees with it is going to be very. It's likely he's going to agree with the next thing you say, and then maybe in 5 years he'll start taking to heart everything said by Neil.
That's his own. That's his responsibility. It's not my responsibility to map out his way of thinking for him. I can only throw a few facts at him. If that inspires him, then he really should have to. You should also be encouraging your audience to find their own ones, locally, domestically, and internationally, into what they're thinking. If someone, particularly in an American point of view, if they feel strongly about certain single issues, if you can think of a way of tying those issues together, and I might call it socialism, and in America you might call it something different. I don't know, like liberalism. Then I think that's the most you can do. I don't think you can only help people to start arguments. You can't really give people answers. I really feel that. I really feel that songwriters are not blessed with answers. So I try and distance myself from that role that you know that people would like you to do as well. That you know they'd like you to come on stage and say, this is the answer. Don't worry, I've thought it out. And I've got the answer, and it's this, don't you wait. Which is as ridiculous as you bringing your kids to be healed by me. I mean, it doesn't work that way. So, and I refuse to be part of the bullshit circus that suggests it does.
よく硬そうな感じ。
まあその辺のことを随分本人も今まで考えてきたんだけども、もうスターになろうなんてそういう希望が全くなかったですけど、頭にない。それよりは人に考えさせる能力っていうか、刺激になりたいと。それがなんていうか音楽やってる動機だね。で自分の世界のスポーツマンだっていうような言われ方言い方はされたくない意識もないし、だけど僕はそこ突っ込んできたんだけど、でも結果的にそうなってるじゃないですか。つまりあなたが言うことを聞き手がね素直に受け入れてるんじゃないですか、考えずに。結果としてはそうなってるんじゃないの。今結果的にそうなってるかもしれないけど、そうはなってほしくない。それよりは考えさせたい。
いや、すごくいい考え方なんだけども、そのビリー・ブラック個人のエゴっていうのはどこにあるんですか？
How does your ego manifest itself?
Well, I try and sort of combat that side of myself. I suppose it manifests itself in nefarious ways that are too embarrassing to talk about. Maybe I don't feel them in the need for applause. I think my ego has a different role in that it needs confession rather than applause. And I think that's the role that my songwriting plays. That's why I write perhaps the more personal songs, is to use the audience both as a soundboard for my own failings, and if they applaud and relate to them, to use them as a kind of like their applause is redemption. In fact, I don't know if this is going to sound at all conceivable to a non-Catholic, but it does. Not that I'm Catholic, but my mother is, and she kind of like instilled all this shit into me, I think, by osmosis. That's really where my ego is, in that need to be heard. It really, when I wasn't doing this job, I was incredibly frustrated in everything I did, and very angry. But since I've had this as an outlet for my ideas, then I feel like I'm taking part in at least I'm taking part in the discussion that goes on about whatever. You know, so that's where I think my ego is, that urge to be, you know, whether it's an urge to communicate or an urge to be heard. I think that's where it operates in its most effective way, not in the big kind of like, look at me, I'm fabulous, but in more kind of a look, I've got a point of view too, listen up, that way.
The audacity to
the real urge. I mean, I've got a real need to play gigs, to communicate. It makes me feel as if I'm involved in what's going on around me. When I didn't do it, I felt like I was just literally had no purpose. So that's where my ego is.
あえて人の前でね、もう自分が考えていること思っていることを曲として表現する、表現を人に押し付ける、まあそういう人たちに反応させる、あえてそういうことをしようっていうのは英語の表れだと言えるんじゃないですか。母親がカトリック教だったんだけど、自分はそうじゃないんだけども、カトリック教の人っていうのはね、何でもこう自分の悪いところを罪をね告白 しなきゃいけないっていうところがあって、でまあいつの間にか感化されてしまったから、やはり自分にもそういうところがあって、罪をさらけ出した。
I mean, you have to have some ego to do this job. You couldn't do the job in the first place. So all these people who shy away and say, I don't, like you try to chapters this world, we never talk to them. You know, everyone has that. But I think it's whether you can control it or let it run riot. And all the time encourage not only the temptation, but there's a lot of encouragement from within the industry, both from the media and from your own record company, to let it go fucking mad. You know, so you just have to kind of. I would rather observe other people's egotistical excesses than actually focus strongly on what my own might be. You know, so I don't really think much about ego. It doesn't mean I don't have a lurking one back there, you know. So.
Well, it seems that everybody has.
I think so. Yeah.
It's manifested in different ways.
Yeah, I think so.
じゃあ今度のアルバムの記事に聞きたいんですが、あなたのそうした性的なスタンスの表現の方法というのがコンサートによって非常に深まっているという気がするわけです。というのは、
まあ最初から結構良かったんじゃないので。
いやいや、今までがその性的な直接的なね、テーマがすごく大きかった。今回少ないのよ。
逆に少ないの。
それで極めて個人的な問題とね、それから極めて性的なテーマが同居してるの。で、その同居してんだけどね、企業の統治感があるのよ。どうしてなの
？There seems to be an odd dichotomy in music now, whereas it was more solidly political in the beginning. It's now half personal, half political. But which is oddly enough that it seems to form a whole. It seems to be unified.
Yep. I think that I was aware, or I became more and more aware, particularly between these last two albums, that I was becoming one-dimensionally political, and that life and all politics. I mean, and I hate people who just go drone on and on about politics. If you do take some activity, you do quite often bump into people at political meetings or in discussion who just have no other perspective other than the political, and their political ideas is just in everything. Now, I don't think life should be like that. So I became aware of the need, not only artistically, but also after the defeat in '87 at the election at Anne and Margaret Thatcher, deep personal need to reevaluate the balance of these two in my life, because I felt that continued frantic political activity after '87 would be operating in a vacuum for a while, and that would just have to calm down a bit, and I have to permeate what I felt about that, the feelings through. So I went back to the thing that I'm much more assured of, the thing I can write more at ease with, the thing that that is much easier to contact people on, because you're dealing in more an abstract, which is the personal. And while I was doing that, I found this quote on the album from Antonio Gramsci, which I hope they'll translate on the Japanese version, which basically says, he says it in six sentences because he's a Marxist intellectual, but I can sum it up in one. It says, unless you've loved someone with all your heart, or allowed yourself to be loved, you can't be a socialist, because socialism is fundamentally about loving people. And that brought together the two parts of my feeling for one whole. And so then I felt, writing personal songs is not apolitical. It doesn't have to be a complete and utter either or. And more importantly, as an artist, I don't want to be perceived as an either or. I don't want to be either a political singer or just an entertainer. I want to try and bring the two of them together, because that is much more, not only more satisfying for me as an artist, but I'd like to think it has a more subversive edge to it.
Who said that?
Antonio Gramsci is the founder of the Italian Communist Party. Gramsci.
How do you spell that?
Gramsci.
87年の、殺師匠の、再選された時は自分にとっては大きな分岐点だった。そこでなんていうか、自分がこう大きな敗北を食らってしまったような気がして、しょうがなかった。そこでこうもう一遍ね、もうゼロから考え直そうじゃないかと思って、もう政治的なことだけ歌ったんじゃない、もうどうにもならないと。で、イタリアのね、Italian Socialist Party?
Communist Party, founded the Italian Communist Party.
そのイタリアの共産党の創立者であるグラムシという人が名言があるんだよね。人を愛しなければ、あるいは人に愛されなければ社会主義は理解し得ないという名言があるんだけども、そこで自分で考えたんだけど、やっぱりその政治的なことだけじゃなくて、人と接するにあたっていろんなその個人的なことも音楽に取り入れてもいいんじゃないかと思ったわけ。そういういきさつだ。
あなたのその極めて明確な政治的な方針がね、方針がこう硬くなりすぎちゃって、人と人とのこうフレキシブルな関係を阻害していくような、そういうケースというのはなかったんですか？
We have found that the political views, political slant obstructed dealings with others.
I think one obstructs my access to media in Britain, because being perceived as a political artist always means being a leftist. You're only political if you're a lefty, you're not political if you're upholding the right-wing view. And secondly, it gets in the way in that people say, oh, Billy Bragg gets all politics, I won't bother listening to this record, it's down to deal politics. So yeah, it's a bit of being so overtly political is a bit like painting yourself into a corner. But the alternative, I'm afraid, is to do nothing, and I'm afraid I can't deal with that. As someone who wants to encourage others to take responsibility, I can't really just write songs. If you're going to write them songs, you have to come up with the actions to match them. And I think that problem can be overcome by the use of using interviews and stuff to explain things. I don't think people should be surprised that I have a human side. It shouldn't be all cold, po-faced, ideological mumbo jumbo. I think that's the great mistake of the left. They make it all into science. Politics isn't science, it's a human thing, I think.
I think that covers you, the artist, about you the person. Has that stance on your part ever gotten in the way of personal relationships?
No, it just means that I tend to begin on my love affairs by talking about Marx rather than talking about where you want to go for dinner. That's all. Getting on board some very interesting discussion, I suppose, if that's how you mean. No, even socialists, but
that makes sense. 特になんていうか個人的にはね、要するにそういう政治的なスタンスは人との、コミュニケーション障害違うわけじゃなくて、アーティストとしてはね、やはりこのマスコミにね、嫌われるっていうか、あいつはただっていう見方をされてしまうから、結構敬遠される。
実際その労働党のアーティストみたいなさ、そういうイメージからさ、具体的に圧力がかかったりとかね、そういう先入観を持たれて損したとか、活動費が狭まったとかさ、
どこからプレッシャーあるの？
いや知らないけどさ、そういうことはないだろう。だからこの人は労働なんだっていう、そういうとこから大企業からスポンサードしてもらえないとかさ、そんなことはねえのかな。
Do you have any like affiliations with the Labour Party?
yeah, I'm a member.
So has that ever? I guess that just kind of contributes to the mass media view.
Guess it does, yeah. But having to deal with them because the political cultural collective that I belong to, Red Wedge, works with them rather than for them. Very important distinction. But I felt much more. It's a lot easier for me to talk to the leader of the party, knowing that I'm a member. I think it's easier for him to deal with me, knowing that I'm not just pissing around like a pop star. I think you think some of the Red Wedge that I actually wanted to take part. So yeah, I mean again, if you're trying to encourage people to take part in political activity, then you really have to do it by example, not by saying get stuck in there and then going off and pissing in the wind.
Have you ever lost out because of that affiliation with Red Wedge or Labour Party? That was part of the question there.
Well, there's an incredible pressure on the media, particularly on the BBC, which has a stranglehold on the pop media because it has the national broadcasting monopoly.
Yeah, right.
They have a lot of pressure from the Conservative Party.
Is that right?
Both obvious and very subtle. So no record producer who wants to go a long way in the BBC is going to program a lot of Billy Bragg.
But why would a record producer have anything to do with the BBC?
No, radio producer.
Oh, I see.
Show producer.
Oh, okay,
much as a DJ might like it,
yeah.
no producer can encourage a lot of Billy Bragg stuff, and they say things like, "Oh, your accent's crap. That's why it is," and lots of other different reasons. But in the end, I think that it's not that there's a ban or anything. I'm not suggesting them being paranoid. I think just if you're a time server in the BBC, it's a lot less trouble if you don't play.
Don't make words.
Whatever that goes through, feminist music, black music, political music, that's kind of like quite a. Of course, every now and then something nips through. I mean, the number one with She's Leaving Home was very much, well done, Bill. You're part of it all now. But as soon as you went back to political songs with Great Leap Forward, it was sorry, Braggy. Don't bring that. Don't bring it up. It's like being rude at dinner in front of your parents. So that, it definitely does. I mean, the whole Red Wedge thing definitely has that kind of effect. But you have to do what you have to do.
だけどさ、基本的に政治っていうのはなんか面倒くさくて退屈なもんだっていうそういう感じないですか？
Do you ever get the feeling that politics is all just a big boring subject?
Worse, I get the feeling that does it make any fucking difference at all. There's a song in the new album called Waiting for Great Leap Forward, in which I attempt to communicate that out to other people, so that people who are in the audience or at home or wherever sitting thinking, fuck, I just can't see how's this all going to work out. I want to communicate that doubt, because I'm much more of at home with the doubters. I have great difficulty with the people who think that politics has the answer to everything, particularly social politics. I think socialist politics, or socialism as an idea, should make a situation where happiness is possible. It doesn't guarantee happiness. It just makes the situation, brings more possibilities of achieving whatever personal happiness it is. So I am a doubter. I have to admit that, and although it annoys a lot of people on the left that I say that, I think it's much. I think honesty is what you have to serve. You know, I had a discussion with a Russian musician last week, and we were in East Berlin at the Political Song Festival. He said truth is the most important thing to serve. And I don't think that's true. I think truth is relative to who tells people, and that honesty, even when it's painful, is by far and away the best to serve. To try it.
You read the differentiation between truth and honesty.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think the label you're saying like truth is just information. Right?
No, truth is relative to whoever's telling it to you. Different people have different truths, right? Do you think that? I mean, it's a philosophical point.
Yeah, I think more philosophical, more semantic.
Huh?
It seems like more semantic.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It depends what you think truth is. Yeah. Well, you know, it's the difference between Pravda and Glasgow. That's what I said to him. He was a Russian.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's what I was trying to say. Really, that you know, that truth is kind of like someone says this is going to solve all our problems. Honesty is like, well, it might, you know. It possibly could. I'd rather. I'm more in that frame of mind when it comes to most things, including love, and you know, the suggestion that love solves all our problems and makes everything right. I'm equally, you know, if a relationship does make you happy and solve your problems, you probably have to work really. You probably have to work very, very hard to maintain it and make a lot of compromises.
ちょっとアルバムの方に話戻したいんですけど、今回だからそういう個人的なテーマがね、結構多くなってるんで、私はそれが非常に興味深くて好きなんだけども、この最初のシーズがやったニューステルっていう曲についてよろしければ、これ必要なんでしょうかね。
Getting back to the album, first, the more personal side, she says you're very impressed by your life. She's got a new spell.
Yeah, that's the opening song.
What?
The opening song.
The opening song.
Yeah.
What is that about? Is that,
relationships and the way that when you're involved in a relationship with someone, your perception of life is a bit altered and centered around them, as if it's almost a magic spell. I suppose that's what I was getting at, but without having to really want to state that. It's about the chemistry between people.
What exactly do you mean?
That it's almost like the way that the character's life is changed by meeting this woman is almost as if she's put hex in.
Is that like sardonic?
I think so, yeah. Ironic, in fact.
Ironic.
We're always having to explain irony to foreigners. It's an English pastime. I sometimes think there's an ironic curtain that we have to overcome. I tried to explain to the East Germans last week, and they just couldn't get their head around ironic curtain. But there you go. Yeah, it's very important. But it's very important. Irony is the ability to I think, is what saves us, particularly when you're dealing with, you know, heavy-duty political stuff as well. The ability to laugh at pomposity. And I think irony is the ability to laugh at what's the word? Not duplicity. The ability to see humour in someone's failings. I think some cultures really can't deal with that. You know, particularly if your culture is based on winning it all the time and never admitting that you're failing. So I think it's a very powerful weapon in communication. Like a sense of irony goes a long, long way.
Sure, my XTC had a song
called
At First Sight.
Yeah, brilliantly ironic XTC.
Yeah. No, just when you mentioned it, remind me of that.
Yeah.
They did that song like Black Sea album years and years ago.
Yeah.
Love at First Sight. It's about an ironic look at love at first sight.
個人的なこと言って
シーズがスペルっていうのは、スペルっていうのはね、綴りのスペルじゃなくて、10問っていうのが、10問かける。10問っていうの。つまり惑わすっていうね。だからあの子に、惑わされてしまった僕みたいな感じで、苦笑いしながらバカだなって。あいつのあんな儚いもんだ。新しい女の子しまってたんで。
そういう歌なんだ。彼の体験をそのまま映してるような感じじゃないんだ。あなたがラブソング書くとなんか全部自分の実話に基づいたものしか書かないような、そういう気が僕はした。
Given to believe that you base your stuff on personal experience.
Ray Bradbury once said what he did was he invented a character and took that character for a walk to see what happened. And sometimes, you know, it turns into a story. Other times you throw it in the bin. So I think what I do is I take things that have happened to me, and then take those things for a walk. And you've got a number of conclusions to get to. Very few of the songs are actually literally word for word autobiographical. Most of them are kind of like, this happened, how am I going to explain this happened? I use this characterization to do that.
まあ、大体実話に基づいてるんだけども、実話に基づいて、さらにまあ一人で使ってみる、こういろんな新しい展開をこうさせてみるっていう、そういう手法を取ってる。
もっとこの実体験を赤裸々にすることみたいなさ、そういう小説型のライターはどう思うんですか？ジャクソン・ブラウンとそうです。
What do you think of the type of guy like Jackson Brown, who, everything's pretty much in first person singular?
Well, I think there's a tendency among singer-songwriters to contemplate their own belly button a bit too much. I must admit, I had a great admiration for Jackson Brown. But I think that's what happened to him in the 70s. That's why we kind of like lost sight of him in England, because they were so self-obsessed. They stopped communicating clearly with the audience. So I'm aware of that tendency, and I try to avoid it. But I mean, there's been some criticism of the new album, that it's too much about me going about my own problems and not enough about everyone else's. So maybe I'm so aware of it, it's creeping up behind me.
Yeah, you talk about that being the case in England, when you talk about excessive concentration on one's belly button, England produced like bands like Marillion and
tell me about it, man. I'm not saying, I wasn't accusing anyone.
You've got some people in the ozone out there, man.
You're right. They're through the ozone, man. They've found the hole and they've gone through it. Wow, a long way.
I guess it's not exactly the national character.
No.
Reject that wholesale.
It is, yeah. No, there's always an element of people who are that literally self-obsessed to find a reflection in that.
Right.
They will be sent away for correction. Back to the farm.
Yes, no.
いやいや、じゃああと2つあるんですよ。
Two more.
Yeah.
あなたは非常に自分の活動を整理してね、常にポジティブに働いてるけども、時々なんかすごく後ろ向きな気持ちになって、もういいんだ俺なんかどうせいいんだよっていう甘ったれたようなですね、どうしようもない後ろ向きな気持ちになってしまうことがない。
You seem to always like be going in a very positive direction. Always going forward, stepping forward. But do you ever feel like kind of sort of retreating with your tail between your legs there?
Well, I think you have times when you have to reassess the idea of progress for progress' sake. But I think the more you're trying to refine an idea and refine a means of communication. I'll be perfectly honest with you, I've no idea what's at the end of it all. I don't have a set goal and things. I just want to be able to state my ideas in a more clear manner. And I think that's the compromise that's to be had between political expression and access to the media is a very delicate balance. And I'm often, trying to find that balance. Some people who are more politically aware say, oh, you're selling out by making stuff that's radio acceptable, and then other people are saying, look, if you don't, make this more listenable, then you're never going to get this access. So, I don't really, that doesn't scare me so much as the people who want me to be a leader of something. That's the time I feel like getting very, very angry and shouting at people.
もし目的があるとするならば、それを自分の考えをより明確に表現しようというところにあると思う。それこそに別にこれといった目的がないから、もう俺はダメだ、どうせその目的が達成できない、俺には無理だっていうふうにはならない。時々はもう一遍自分を見つめ直そうということにはなるけど、でももう諦めようっていう、そういうことまであったかな。
なんでなんだろう。だけどね、日々どんなに頑張ってる人でも、そういう肯定的に考えることができなくて、ポジティブに考えられなくて、落ち込んでしまってですね、 人の顔見てもやらない大体あるものだけど
he's rather amazed that you can sort of maintain that sort of a positive outlook.
Yes, I might.
自分も信じられないけど、自分がそういう人間であ
But
る。
socialism is about optimism. You have to believe that if you're going to be a socialist, you have to believe that if everybody had an opportunity to take part in society, that it would be a positive thing. You know, you can't think, you know, because basically socialism is about everybody taking responsibility and democracy being extended into the workplace, into the home, you know, in every aspect, rather than just once every 5 or 4 years. And if you're going to believe that, you have to, you know, you have to believe that there's good in all people, and I suppose it makes you be optimistic. I mean, you know, losing the election in '87, I was in bed for like nearly 2 days. I was just, oh fuck, man, I can't tell you how depressing it was. But in the end, you have to pick up and carry on. It becomes more you know, you go back and think of the reasons why you started, and they're still valid. So you've got no option.
じゃあ、もう一本入ってやったら。
あんまりちょっと違うのかもしれないけど、あなたの歌の中にあるエモーションを聞いていくと、どうもそのポジティブな活動とは裏腹にね、常にその戦っても負け続けていく、そういう人の視点がなんかあるような気がするんですよ。こういう感じでおかしくない。
You may take umbrage at this, but he gets the feeling that, you know, in your songs, it's a message or, you know, the emotions of a man who seems to know he's going to lose, though, and always end up kind of the guy at the bottom rung of the ladder, and always end up, you know, being on the losing side, and yet, you know, he continues to carry on. Is that sort of defeatist?
England made me.
What's that?
England made me.
England made you.
That's very English attitude. We always celebrate the underdog. All the great British victories, Charge of the Light Brigade, they were totally fucked. Dunkirk, they were totally, utterly fucked. You know, it's an English thing, I think.
English is defeatist?
No, not defeatist, but you know, kind of like there's an admission that it might not all turn out okay in the end. I think I'm very much against that Hollywood kind of thing, that love solves everything and everything's going to be good in the end and all that. But I am an optimist, not to feel there's too much negativity. I hope I'm not sending out too much negativity.
But by saying you're an optimist, are you automatically admitting, though, you are in losing circumstances?
No, I'm trying to just communicate that I think the experience of most people with regard to relationships is not a great outcome. Relationships don't go great and blossom. They tend to go into nothing, and no one really knows when they end up peter out. And I'm trying, by communicating my thoughts, I'm trying to make people who have their own thoughts that they worry about feel not so bad. It's the best way to explain it. I don't really think I'm that defeatist. There is an optimistic side. It's just so close in perhaps trying to exercise the pain and stuff. It may be sometimes a bit hard to get down. Hey, I tell him not to worry. I'm quite happy most of the time. Just I have to get all that shit out. Once it's out, and I feel better for it.
That will be conveyed. What we do is we translate all this later.
Yeah, that's cool. I understand. Look, it gets you by a lot quicker as well.
Exactly.
Good questions, though, Tony.
Thank you
very good. Right. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, then.
See you next 4 years.
Next 4 years, right.
Thanks for this. Right, where are we going to lunch tonight?